Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. So in today's tutorial, we're going to look at how nested loops work in programming. Basically, we're going to look at nested loops from a perspective of Python, but the same knowledge that you're going to learn in this in Python can translate to other programming languages that you wish to learn in the future, like JavaScript, C++, Java, Golang, or any language that you wish to learn in the future. The knowledge and understanding of nested loops in Python is going to translate over. Okay, so basically what I want to look at here is how we can have a loop instead of a loop. So we look at the loops in the other videos. We look at while loops and for loops, right? So I want us to take our knowledge a bit further, and sometimes when programming you need to have a loop instead of another loop in order to achieve or implement a certain algorithm, right? So whenever you're trying to achieve a certain algorithm, sometimes you'll be required to have a loop instead of another loop, right? A for loop instead of a for loop, a while loop instead of a for loop, or something like that of that sort, right? So that's what we're going to be covering, and that's the whole concept of nested for loops. Okay, so the nested for loops are just basically loops within loops, right? Nested, one loop instead of the other. Okay, so I hope that's a bit of much of explanation, and it gives you the idea of what nested loops are. So before we even begin to talk about nested loops, the last tutorial I gave you an assignment of how to make the guess game to allow the users to be able to guess only 3 times, and if they get it wrong after 3 guesses, they are wrong, right? So that's basically it. So I hope you guys have implemented that. Okay, so in this part here, I'm not going to go ahead and actually give you the solution. So I want you to go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Paste your code, just copy your code and paste in the comment section. I want to see your code, guys. I've been writing my codes for so long. I want to see your code. Maybe you guys have a different way of implementing things that I actually don't have. Okay, so let me know in the comment section by simply copying your code and pasting it in there. So I want to really see your code, what you guys have done. Okay, so if you guys have any issues or like you need a solution from me, then I'll do that. I'll make another video and just post a solution. But for today, I want to see you guys what you have done so far. Okay, it's always been me. I want to see what you guys have done. Okay. Okay, so once we have that out of the way, I want to go into my VS Code. So once I'm inside of my VS Code, I want to go ahead and create a file. So I'm going to go ahead and create a file. I'm going to call this file, this is going to be, I think it's going to be 15, right? So part underscore 15.py. So part underscore 15.py file. So once I have this file created, I'm going to do a couple of things. So we talk about nested for loops, right? Where we can have one loop within another loop. So we can have for loops within for loops within while loops within for loops, while loops within while loops. So those are different ways of combining different loops to achieve nested loops. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to have a for loop within another for loop, and I want to show you something. So I want to have a for loop within another for loop. So I'm going to create a simple program. I'm going to go and say for, right? I'm going to say for x in range. We talk about how range works. So x in range 6, right? I want to go ahead and simply say for, I'm going to have another loop instead of that other loop, and that's the whole point of nested loop. So I'm going to say 5, and then I'm going to go ahead and simply say print, and then you're going to go ahead and use f string. So if you remember, if you covered f strings when you're talking about strings, so everything is going to come together right here. So multiplied by, I'm going to say f string again, y is going to be equals to another x times y. Okay, so that's how we can use f strings in Python. So just by looking at this code, what do you think we are going to get? So we're going to go through, for example, we're going to go and pick, we're going to start from 0, right? So we're going to pick the first iteration for the first outer loop. So these are called the outer loops, while these are called the inner loops, right? So we have the outer loop and you have the inner loop, and the inner loop is a loop that is within another loop, and the outer loop is a loop that contains another loop within it. Okay, so I'm going to take for the outer loop, you're going to start from the outer loop. So whenever you're trying to analyze how nested loop works, you'll start from analyzing from the outer loop. Okay, not from the inside outer, but from the outward inward. Okay, so we're going to for the first iteration, x is going to be 0, right? For the first iteration, so we're going to take 0, and for 5 times, right, until 4, we're going to take we're going to say for the first, let's show you the first example. So let me just say, keep a comment. I'm going to say x is going to be 0 and y, let's go. So x, we're going to take x as 0, and then if you reach y, for the first iteration of y, y will be 0. So y will be 0. So the output here, going to output is going to be x, which can be 0 times 0, which y is also 0, is going to be equals to 0 times 0, which is 0, right? X times y, which is 0, 0 times 0, which is 0. And then the second iteration, x is going to be equals to 1, right? X is going to be 1, y is going to be, the second, you're going to go into this loop. We're going to finish this loop first before we go back out. So x is still 0, and y is going to be 1, right? So y is going to be 1, and the output is going to be 0. So 0 multiplied by 1. So 0 multiplied by 1, any number multiplied by 1 is simply 0, right? So we're going to repeat that until we are done at the end of this loop. So it's going to go until 4, right? So and then after you're done with this for loop, you're going to go out to the outside loop. So at the outside loop now, x is going to be 1. So we're going to take 1, and then 1 times 0 is 0, and then 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 3 is 3, 1 times 4 is 4, right? So that's basically it. And then we are done with the inner loop, we go back to the outer loop. So y now x now be 2. So we can make here 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 1 is 1, 2 times 1 is 2 times 1 is 2, right? 2 times 3 is going to be 6, and on off like that. So this is basically just the timetable, right? So sorry, the multiplication table. So if I go in here and then simply run it again, and this is going to be 15, so I'm going to change that to be 15 and run it again, you can see we have created ourselves a multiplication table right here. So that's how basically how it is. So that's how nested loops work in Python, and other programming languages. The same knowledge extends. So we can actually go ahead and let me just after we're done with every iteration, I just want to go ahead and simply say keep a line here so we can know which number we're working with. So create it looks more like this. So the zeros when x is 0, y is going to be the first iteration, y is going to be 0, then y is going to be 1, y is going to be 2, y is going to be 3, y is going to be 4, and any number multiplied by 0 is just 0, right? So yeah, that's some basic high school mathematics. And then you have 1, so x is 1 do this iteration, and y is going to be 0 the first time, and then y is going to be 2, y is going to be 3, y is going to be 4, and then like that, so you get the answer. And then the second iteration for the top for the third iteration for the main loop is the outer loop is x is going to be 2, so y is going to be 0 at first iteration of the inner loop, y is going to be 1 at the second iteration of the inner loop, y is going to be 2 at the third iteration of the inner loop, y is going to be 3 at the fourth iteration of the inner loop, and y is going to be 5 at the fifth iteration of the inner loop. So multiply those values, we get those answers right here. So that's basically how we can create a simple table in a simple table using nested for loops. So that's can create a simple multiplication table using a for loop. So that's basically it. We can have loops of different radius. So let me just write some code and we test some things out. Okay, so I'm just going to comment this out for now and then write some more code, right? So I'm going to say for x in range. So for x in range, you're going to say 6. So we're going to say 6, and this is going to be the outer loop. So don't forget the colon, and then finally don't forget the tab. Okay. So after that, you're going to say a while. So we're having a while loop inside of a while loop inside of a for loop, right? So 5, you're going to say 5. This is just some logic that I'm keeping. You can keep your own logic if you want. And I hope right now you're familiar with arithmetic operators and all of that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of details time explaining this. So we have covered most of the most fundamental things, right? So you guys should be comfortable understanding this. So we have the outer for loop and we have the inner while loop. So this is how it works. So basically, I hope you guys can predict how this out code is going to work. So let me just go in the terminal and run it, and then guys see. Let me just clear the terminal. Let me run it again. This is what we get. So we get these values right here. So that's how our code works. So that's how this loop works. And you can take some time, try to think about it. Think about the for loop. Think about and then go down to the while loop. See how the while loop works, and then go back the for loop. How the while loop will go through all the iterations for each iteration of the main outer loop and all of that. So there are different ways you can do different stuff here. So actually this we have looked at a couple of stuff here. We can also do a lot of things with this. So the only thing I want to do is just finally we're going to learn how to print a simple triangle using a nested for loop. Okay, this is a very very classical problem in in programming, whereby we learn how to print different shapes using nested for loops. So if you learn for loops, one of the things you can challenge yourself to really understand how for loops work is just by simply learning to print some patterns. Okay, so you're going to learn how to print a diamond pattern. You're going to learn how to print a triangle, a pyramid, and stuff like that. So let me just show you what I want to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a variable here. I'm going to call this variable space and type of type int. I'm going to say 6. I'm going to say 6. You can use any number you want. I'm just going to use 6. Okay, so I'm going to say for x in range, I'm going to go ahead and simply say for x in range 7. So I'm going to have 7, and then you're going to simply say print space this a quotes just a space, right? So make sure there's a space between your quotes, right? And then finally you're going to multiply this by space, just like this, and then simply say end is going to be equals to just an empty string, just like that. So then you're going to go ahead and do space. I'm going to explain this code to you just in a minute, but first of all, just let me type it out and I'll explain it to you. Okay, and I'm going to say for y in range. So y in range, you're going to say x, and you're going to y in range, you're going to say x, and you're going to go ahead and simply do the following. So we're going to go ahead and keep the colon, and then finally you're going to say print, and then simply say x, just like this, x, and then you're going to go ahead and say end, and end is just going to be an empty string right there. So once we have that, I'm going to go out here and simply say print, and then you're going to go ahead and simply print just an empty space. So what does this code really do? Let's actually run the code first, and let me just get you fascinated first, and I'll explain it to you. So we simply went ahead and printed a triangle, right? So I kind of like a right angled triangle. So how does the code work? Can you really pause the video and just think about how it works? Because you have a nested for loop, basically a loop within another loop. So how does it work? Why did we get that shape? Okay, so let me just explain it to you. Just take a look at the space, the shape. Take a look at the shape. Okay, so what do you think? At the beginning part of here, we have more space, and then less space, less space, less space, less space, until we have no space at all. Okay, that's one thing I want you to notice. Another thing I want you to notice is that we have more x's, so 1x, 2x, 3x, and more x's until the very last line, right? So one thing I want you to pay attention to is that, first of all, I need to go ahead and have a couple of spaces and then print out x, right? Let's just think of this first line. So I need to print a couple of spaces, and then finally I need to go ahead and print x, right? So that's what this part of the code does. So for x in range, how does the range do? We said range in 7, so it's going to be 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can see we have 6 different rows. Okay, and that's what the outer loops control. It controls the number of rows that our triangle has. So if I increase this value here, we'll get a bigger, longer, a taller triangle. Let me say taller triangle. So you can see we have something like this, and later it gets out of shape, and I'll show you just about that. So yeah, that's it. So on the first, we need to go ahead and print a couple of spaces before we print a triangle, and that's what this code does here. So what it simply does is that it prints out spaces. How many times? 6 times, because as x is 6 initially, the values space is 6 initially. So we print empty spaces how many times? Because I'm using a multiplication operator, so we're going to print it how many times? 6 times initially. So after doing that, we need to go before we go into the next loop, you simply minus 1 from the space value. Yeah, the reason why we minus 1 is so at the next iteration we don't print 6 spaces, we print 5, which is like this. So we print a bigger 6, and then later we print 5, and then 4, and then 2, and then 1, and then 0. So that's basically it. So we print a space. How many spaces do we want? 6 spaces. And then later we take space minus 1, because on the next iteration we want to print, or the next row we want to print 1 less space. That's what that does. So let's move on to the inner loops. What does the inner loop do? So the inner loop is going to simply range in 6. It's going to range in y. So it's going to start from 0, right? So that is why if you look at our triangle, we have an empty space right here. So the reason we have an empty space right there, because range starts from 0. So if you want to start from 1, you can keep 1 this way and then run the code again. Now you should it still has that empty space right there, sadly. So let's go ahead, actually we'll work ahead and figure that out. Okay, so let me just explain this to the basics first before we move on. So we're going to go and loop through for x in range, for y in range of x. So initially x is going to be how many? X is going to be let's say x is going to be 0 initially, right? So x is going to be initially 0. So once x is initially 0, we're going to go ahead and simply loop through it. So basically we're just going to go ahead and print nothing at the first glance. That's why we have an empty space right here. And you can see when I change x to be 0, when I say we start from 1, it kept 2 more spaces, which is different from the initially just 1 line of space that was kept. So I explain that to you just in a second. So for y in the range of x, so initially x is 0 on the first iteration of the outer loop. So we're just going to go ahead and print empty, right? So nothing. We're going to print out nothing because x is 0. On the second iteration, x is going to be 1, and then space now is going to be 5, right? The value of space is 5. So we're going to print empty spaces 5 times, and that's going to cover here. So on the second iteration of the main outer loop, x is going to be 1, right? So we're going to go ahead and say print space how many times? This number of times. But remember that space it was 6, which we minus 1 initially. So now space is going to be 5. So it's going to print 5 empty spaces, and that's what is going to go ahead and print out 5 spaces here, right? Instead of 6, it was initially 6. So once we have once we have those five spaces created and then once we have those spaces created, basically I keep end equals to an empty string, because by default Python skips to a new line after every print statement. So just by saying end is going to be empty string, we're just basically telling Python don't skip to a new line after you print a space, because we want all the space to be in a linear form, right? Not in a linear form in a horizontal manner, right? Not in a vertical manner. So that's why I say end is going to be just an empty string. And for after that, we're just going to go ahead and simply go into the we're going to say space minus 1, which space now is 5. 5 minus 1 is going to be 4, right? So now space in the computer's memory is 4. The variable space in the computer's memory is 4. And you're going to go into the inner for loop. And the inner for, what you're going to go ahead and do, we're going to say for y in range of x. So now x is going to be 1. So we're going to move from 0 to 1. So it's going to go ahead and simply print out just a single x, basically, right? So, and then after that, it's going to go ahead and say, no, don't go to a new line, because you want to print all the x's in a horizontal line and not vertical line. So don't go to a new space, just keep on the same line and just print another x in case there is. So after that, you go ahead and print out a new line. We go to a new line, and then after the new line, you're going to go ahead and go to the next iteration. X is going to be 2, right? Right. So x is 2. And what x is 2 is, you're going to go ahead and print space. How many times? We're going to print space 3 times, because now we minus 1 from 4, right? So it's 3. You're going to print space 3 times. After that, you're going to go into the inner for. You're going to loop for y in range. Now x is 2. So it's going to go 0, 1, and 2. Right? 0, 1, and 2. Right? So it's going to print 2 times of x. So it's going to go ahead and print out x. And then finally, don't skip to a new line. Basically, we want all the x's to be next to each other in a horizontal manner. After that, you go ahead and print a new line and repeat the same process over and over again. So it can be a bit tricky to understand when someone explains it to you. So the best thing to do, I wish I had a writing pad, but I don't have a writing pad. So if you have a pen and a paper, just take a pen and a paper and just try to go through the loops, and then try to write down on a pen and a paper. It will make much more sense to you. I hope I know my explanation might not have clarified things much, because for me, I'm more of a visual person. I understand things through graphs and looking at things better. I remember things just by looking at something better than trying to memorize it. So yeah, so I don't know. I wish I could have I have a writing pad and I could explain it to you. You can just support the channel, like the video, and subscribe. That's one way you can support the channel, and maybe hopefully in the future I can get a writing pad and I can explain things much in depth for you. But basically, that's how it works on the surface level. So I hope my explanation actually made some sense for you guys. So if it doesn't, maybe I can improve on it. So let me know in the comment section below in case you guys have any trouble understanding this. Okay, good. So one way you can also have we can print another shape is just by keeping a space after the x. So instead of having this, we're just going to go ahead and keep a space there, and let's run the code again and let's see what we get. So now we get a pyramid. So just by changing from having no space to having a space, so this is having no space right after x, and this is having space after x, you can see we're getting different shapes or patterns, right? So this is a pyramid, and this was previously a triangle, right? So that's how it works. And one thing I can also say, you can say 1, and I'm going to say x plus 1. I think that should do something and prevent this line from coming up here. So let me just run the code again. It doesn't really prevent the line from coming up here, because initially we're getting a space, right? Let me just say x plus 1. So just delete this and just say x plus 1. Yeah, so we get out the space getting removed. So that's how it works. So yeah, that's basically it. But one thing you can see that it increased a bit in dimension, so you can find a way of tweaking this algorithm and stuff like that. So yeah, that's it, how we can print different patterns in we can print pyramids. So yeah, that's how we can print a pyramid. So one of the challenges I'm going to give to you assignment is, how do you print a diamond shaped, right? So to really make sure that you guys really understand this and not just memorize anything from the video, I want you to go ahead and print for me a diamond shape, and that's a part of the assignment of today's assignment. Go ahead and actually write the code to print a diamond shape, just like the way you see it here. So you've already printed the top part of the diamond shape, which is just the pyramid. So what you have to do is just repeat the same thing, but in an inverted order, right? So in an inverted order, and then if you have a pyramid, that's basically it. So just like taking two sandwiches like bread, and then putting them together like sandwich them, something like that. So yeah, so that's basically it of how you can work with pyramid, how you can print different patterns in Python. So I hope that this explains a lot of stuff to you. Just to also make sure that you understand more, challenge yourself to print a pyramid, and don't go on the internet and just Google and copy paste. Try it yourself. 2 hours, 3 hours, that's a lot of time. But yeah, just try it yourself a couple of times. If you fail, that's when you can go ahead and Google things on the internet and find out how you can use the internet to find solution to print your pattern of a diamond, right? So yeah, it looks like a kite or a diamond, whatever you want to call it. Basically, it's fine. That's a diamond shape to me. It might look like a kite to another guy, so it's also fine. So yeah, that's it. And the next row, we're going to go ahead and actually write this pattern and find a solution to how we can write this pattern. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this row so far. So make sure that you like, you share, you subscribe to the YouTube channel for more videos like this. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Again, if you have any question, feel free. Don't feel shy. We are all learning out here. So let us know in the comment section below. I might help you, or someone out here might help you. I always say this at the end of every video because I want you guys to be comfortable as much as possible. Learning programming on your own is not an easy task. So one of the easiest ways is to utilize existing resources and people online to help you address your questions of whatever you don't understand, right? So yeah, that's why we have things like Stack Overflow and all of that, platforms for programmers to ask questions and stuff like that. So if you don't know Stack Overflow is, just go and Google what Stack Overflow is. That's one great tip you'll be using as a programmer from now on. It's really just great where programmers can ask questions and get answers. So feel free, and don't feel shy about anything because we are all out here learning. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Keep safe.